Right, so it looks like it's hit 6:30.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
shall we get going? So
Yeah.
do you want to give a little introduction first,
Yeah.
Daniel?
So thank you everyone for coming so far. People on Zoom and YouTube, you're welcome to engage. If you're on Zoom, you've got the chat thing, and I'm not sure exactly, but I think Bonnie might ask you a few questions throughout the presentation. On YouTube as well, you're very welcome to leave comments and stuff like that as well. Thank you all for coming. We're doing a presentation today on for those people thinking of getting a dog and where to begin with that. Bonnie is a behaviourist that runs the organisation Pets Explained, which is worth having a look at. They do lots of really cool infographics and information as well, even if you're not looking specifically for a behaviour consultation. So definitely check them out. And yeah, I know there's a lot to get through, so I'll let you get going.
Wicked, right. Thank you. So hello and welcome, guys, to this webinar today. So this session is aimed at those wanting to know more about how to prepare for and the process of getting a new dog, specifically in the UK as well. So the structure of this session will be, first I'll tell you a bit about myself and how I got into the industry, and Pets Explained. And then the webinar will last an hour before about half an hour session for any questions that you may have. And this session is hosted by fantastic Daniel, who set this up from Animal Behaviour Kent. Right, let's get going. So what will you learn with me today? So I've broken this content down for you into sections and spanning all the different types of dog or puppy or age group that you might be interested in getting and the types of acquisition that you need to know about. So selecting a pet that suits your family, which is very important. Responsible ownership laws for dog owners. So there are actually quite a few laws that you might not be aware of that you should really know about before you go into getting a dog, because you will be held to them. Where to look. There are so many places that you can get dogs, and there are so many different types of acquisitions. So we're going to go through those one by one. How to settle your dog into your new home. A little bit different for puppies, a little bit different for adult dogs, but we'll go through all of those. Traits and needs of different types of dogs, so breeds and other things that might alter the behaviour. And questions to ask at rescues or breeders, because this is really important as well. Getting all the right information for you and for your own personal situation. Cool, so first a little bit about me. So it's important to be critical of any source of information that you get, especially true when you're looking into getting a dog. And any individual or organisation giving out information, it's really useful for you to know where they get their information from, where their experience is, to know whether or not you should trust them. So I thought I'd give you some information about me. So I studied animal behaviour and welfare undergrad. Last year I finished my clinical animal behaviour MSc. So clinical is applying animal behaviour to specifically domestic animals with problems in the home. I've worked as a behaviourist for a large national rescue charity. I've done some media interviews for them as well, mainly with dogs and the more severe and aggression-based behaviours, but in addition, all of the normal stuff as well. Volunteer behaviourist at a sighthound charity. I love my greyhounds. I work in intake management at the moment at National Rescue Charity, so I see a lot of the reasons for people bringing animals in, the reasons people are looking for new animals, and matching how animals are matched up to people. So I've got a lot of information on that process. At the moment, I'm also sitting on the PAAG, which is the Pet Advertising Advisory Group for cats and dogs, in terms of looking into how animals are marketed, which I think has changed massively this year with COVID, etc. Publishing a study this year on how humans interpret dogs and behaviour, which I think is really fascinating. I'm currently a candidate member of a couple of, so there's a lot of acronyms in there, but 2 organisations that help me work towards being a certified clinical animal behaviourist, which is the highest standard that the Royal Veterinary College recommend vets to refer to. And I own Pets Explained. Pets Explained is my little behaviour consultation business. So the laws, what do you need to know? As a dog owner to be, you are legally responsible for your dog and what they do to an extent. So you must be prepared to manage them and be a really responsible dog owner. First off, law changed in 2015, your dog needs to be microchipped. It's a legal requirement. Often if you've got your dog from a breeder or if you've got your dog from a rescue, they will already be microchipped. But if you've got your dog elsewhere from a friend, might not be. So it might be worth seeking out a local charity which can support you with that, or your local vet. Also important, keep it up to date. If you move, then you don't put your new email address or phone number on the dog's microchip, you might not get reunited as quickly. So your dog's life should meet some minimum welfare standards, and these were set out in 2006 with the Animal Welfare Act in the UK. So this law was designed to prevent animal cruelty, but it's got some really interesting things in there that also teach us how to keep the animal at a positive level of welfare rather than just avoiding the negative. So outlined by DEFRA, the 5 freedoms are freedom from hunger and thirst, feed and water your dog, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, or disease, generally can be covered by going to your vet regularly. Freedom to express species-specific behaviours, so behaviours that dogs enjoy doing, which can be as simple as sniffing the grass outside. They get a lot out of that. And freedom from fear and distress. No one should live in, a constant state of fear and distress. So we've also got the Dangerous Dogs Act, which was written in 1991. And was altered a little bit in 2014 with the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act. So the wording in this is important. So they write that dogs mustn't be dangerously out of control. Now that might mean something different to different people, but essentially what that means is you are responsible for ensuring your dog doesn't cause an injury to other people or an assistance dog out in public. But this also covers private spaces. Now, what that means is if your dog causes an injury, that is an offence. But also if your dog just causes someone to be afraid that they might injure them, that also counts as an offence under this, which is why if you feel that your dog has a behaviour problem that might cause people to be distressed or fear that they might be bitten or bitten themselves, it's really important to notice that early and then go to a behaviourist and get your dog checked out and get a behaviour plan in place, so that you know how to manage that to protect yourself and also your dog from this one. And there's also section 1 of this act, which lays out illegal breeds. So the Pit Bull Terrier, the Japanese Tosa, the Dogo Argentino, and the Fila Brasileiro in this country are illegal breeds. Now, there's a lot of campaigning around that's actually trying to repeal that part of the act, because other countries and lots of studies have shown that actually a certain breed of dog is very unlikely to, specifically because it's a breed, be more aggressive, which has been shown in other countries with bite rates, but we haven't quite caught up with that yet, but currently it's still in the law. So nuisance behaviours. Barking is a normal canine behaviour, but if it becomes excessive, your neighbours are probably going to get quite annoyed. And what that can do is councils can then give you a warning and ask you actually to remove your dog from the property. So again, another one to catch early and go to the behaviourist if you're finding that to be a problem or if your neighbours are. Fouling. Most places in the UK that are public require you by law to pick it up. And there are some councils actually that are DNA testing the poo to test who it is. So picking up your dog's poo, and there are some lovely eco-friendly poo bags out there. So collars and tag. Now this one feels like it might be a bit outdated. If we're microchipping, do we need the collars and tag? Well, in the law, yes. So if your dog is in a public place, it needs to be wearing a collar and a tag with the owner's name and the owner's address on it so that they can contact you. But I think nowadays you'd probably put your mobile number on it as well. Quickest way to get your dog back, I think. Cool, so that's all of the laws that you need to know about at the moment in the UK generally as a dog owner. Where are we going next? So what sort of dog is right for you? As well as what type of dog that you would like, it's really important to first consider what lifestyle and environment do you have to offer a dog, and then you can go from there. It's a really good starting block. So firstly, do you live with or will have visiting children? Because if you do, you're going to want a friendly dog that will get along with kids and not pose a risk. Now, firstly, it's important to say every dog carries a bite risk, because it's not an individual trait that a dog is aggressive. It is, if a dog is pushed to a certain point, then they will always be aggressive. Same with people. If you were in fear of your life, then you might do something you wouldn't normally do. So they always need to be supervised. That being said, some dogs are more confident than others, and some dogs are more relaxed than others around children. Generally, puppies and dogs with a history of being really comfortable and friendly with children are going to be the best place for those if you have kids in the home. What are your own limits? So This one isn't often talked about, but I think if you love the idea of, a really bouncy husky puppy, but actually you're not sure that you'd be able to manage, a really, when that grows into a bigger dog and is very, very strong, and, maybe he's really running after squirrels and, almost takes your arm off. So I think it's also important to know, what are my own limits? What am I and am I not willing to manage in a dog, really? And then going from there and be prepared generally. How much time do you spend out of the house? Well, currently, I'm sure a lot of you are going to say, well, I probably don't spend that much time out of the house at the moment. Don't we all? However, though we're all working from home at the moment, it's likely that at some point that's probably going to change. So I would, if you're getting a dog now, plan for a dog that will be okay being at home by themselves if you are likely to have to go back to work soon. So if you do work from home, that's fantastic for potentially some of the younger dogs that need around-the-clock supervision. But if you are likely to be working out of the house more, then it might be prudent to think about the costs of a dog sitter or a pet sitter, which would be able to come in and then fill in that social needs gap where the dog doesn't have anyone around during the day. Do you need your dog for a working purpose? So if you need a specially trained dog for something really specific, like there are some really cool things that dogs can do out there. Like there's seizure alert dogs who can tell that you're going to have a seizure 5 minutes beforehand. They're amazing. But if you need a dog for a very specific working purpose, it's good to speak to an organization that specializes in those animals, and they'll be able to give you a list of requirements generally before they give out a dog for that specific reason. How much time can you commit to training? Another really important one. All dogs benefit from training. It's a great way to bond with older dogs, younger dogs, and teach them boundaries and how you communicate. But some dogs take a lot more time and energy into training than others. For example, puppies are going to need a lot of time. Something to consider. Can you commit to a regular grooming routine? So if you've got your curly breeds, your cockapoos, your poodles, your Bichon Frise, are you able to regularly groom them? If not, are you able to regularly send them to a groomer? So that's really important for those because they may develop really painful mats if not groomed regularly, and it can sort of, if they get really tightly matted, it can reduce their movement. So that's an important one. What sort of environment can you offer? So simply put, larger and more active dogs are going to generally require more space to be comfortable. That's not to be said that, a flat environment cannot house a dog, because that's not true. But you need to then think about the dogs that would suit that environment. Puppies are much easier to house train, for example, when they have a garden. If you're up on the 4th floor in a flat and you have to run downstairs with your puppy every time he's going to the toilet and the puppy pads, that's going to be a real struggle. So practicalities to consider there. Big one, do you have other pets? Now, existing pets have to have their own needs considered first. So for example, older pets might not appreciate a really bouncy young puppy bounding around and might be a little bit more intolerant. For example, if you've got a really timid cat that when new people come into the home, they immediately go and hide under things, that cat might not be able to cope with the dog in the home. So once you've established what are my current animals' needs, what kind of behaviors and space sharing do I think that this cat or dog will put up with, then we can go from there. So you've been through all this, you now know what your own needs are, what your own requirements are, and then we can go into, are you ready? You know what you have to offer, but how do you know that you're ready in this moment? It's important to know that now is a good time. How do you know? You're ready for that financial burden. It's quite a big one. So vet bills, insurance, resources, dog training, sitters, dog walkers, groomers. Are you happy and able to cope with all of that? If yeah, then you're probably ready to go. So it's also worth researching. Different dogs will sometimes cost different amounts. Sometimes specific breeds have common problems veterinary-wise that might increase your insurance. If the dog's bigger, he's probably going to eat more. So that's another thing to consider. You are ready, able, and willing to dog-proof your home. Say goodbye to those lovely vases. And you're going to have to cover up things like electrical wires, make sure there's nothing around the home that the animal could injure themselves on, and everything that is quite nice that you think is quite breakable to be put away. So things like that. Have you done your research? Now, one great thing is watching this webinar counts as research. So I'm going to have a big tick for everyone that's currently here at the moment doing that. If you've fully considered every element that we've discussed today at the end of this webinar, and you're willing to resource an ethical, really responsible seller or rescue, then yes, you can tick this one off. Everyone on the family is on board and willing to support with care. That's really important. This should be an enthusiastic agreement decision with everyone in the home. You're willing to get all the equipment and specialized bits and bobs. That comes under your financial burden. It might become later down the line. You need some specialized training leads and stuff like that. Are you willing? Yes, brilliant. You can provide for a dog's human and canine social needs. So dogs were domesticated to enjoy human interaction as well as that of their own species. So are you able and willing to make sure that that dog's needs are provided for with humans? So if that's not you, if you're not at home, dog walker, dog sitter, and also their canine social needs. But these differ. Some dogs don't get on with other dogs, some do, but you'll know. Finally, are you ready for commitment? Because it is a big commitment, really, isn't it? It's like a child. You are going to commit to the ongoing care of another sentient being in your home, and you'll be responsible for it. Are you ready for that? Yes? Fantastic. Now, this I find is a big one. People generally are set on either getting a puppy or getting an adult dog. But what's the difference? Well, in reality, puppies are cuter often. Sorry, adults. You do get very cute adult dogs. You've got that cute baby element with the puppies, but what in reality is the difference that you're getting? So the pace of your lifestyle. Young dogs are characterized by their energy, enthusiasm to experience the world. This is perfect for your really active people who can keep up with that. They have a lot of socialization needs. Your adults are going to be more laid back. They're not in that same life stage, and they might be best matched with those enjoying a less chaotic pace of life, you know? So when I say history, I mean an availability of information on what the dog has gone through in its past or its parents' history, genetics about the parent, information about the parents. Not always available as an adult dog. If it's coming to a rescue with a stray, you're likely to know quite little about it before its journey through rescue. But with puppy, generally you have all that information to hand. You've got the parents that you can ask about, that you can meet. You can look at papers sometimes if you've got registered breeders, and you will know everything that's happened to that dog since it's been with you. So you have control over that. But that being said, that doesn't mean that without having a history, you can't have a brilliantly well-adjusted dog as well. So adjusting to their environments, puppies between 8 to 12 weeks are in what's called one of their sensitive periods, the socialization stage. This is where they learn how to interact with the world. This is every experience that they have with people, with dogs, with new things, with new environments, with textures. They are soaking that up like a sponge at this age. So you put them in a new environment, they're ready, they're soaking it up, they're actively wanting to explore it. But with your adult dogs, it really depends on what they've experienced up to this point. So if you've had a dog that has lived in a home that's very different to your home, they might take a while adjusting. But if you've got a dog actually that's lived in a really similar environment or that is just really confident, they might not need any time, barely any time to adjust either. So very dependent on the individual. Now, puppies are going to need full, constant, ongoing socialization. You really need to be committed to this if you want a well-adjusted dog. They need controlled exposure to new environments. Failure to do this may result in an anxious dog, really, a dog that's unsure how to cope with new situations and might struggle to be introduced to new people or things. So that's quite full on, that commitment. With your adults, they might need training for specific behaviors, you know, generally well-adjusted adult, but barks a bit more than you'd like. Might need to do some basic training for that. Sometimes they have more extensive needs depending on the individual, but not generally as much as your puppies will need. So in terms of being alone, puppies require constant supervision. They're like babies. They need your help all the time, and they need to be kept an eye on, really. Also, things like toilet training is very difficult if you're not there consistently, every time that they're toileting. And it's best really for people that are working from home permanently or have that availability. Adult dogs with a history of coping being alone are generally likely to cope pretty well with being alone for a little bit, short periods. But again, because of their social needs, I'd still advise getting in like a dog walker or a dog sitter midway through the day so that they have something to break up the day. Basic training. So again, like we talked about with desocialization, puppies are going to need that really consistent, ongoing training. Adults might already have it in place. And then there's the fact that an adult dog is likely to have an established temperament. Puppies are very changeable in that they're in that sensitive period. Everything that you do from that moment onwards is going to help them learn and shape into the puppy or dog that they're going to be later. But an adult's probably pretty established. Now, the thing with that is if you get an adult dog from a rescue centre, you're likely going to have a really long assessment that's going to outline how that dog is going to cope in a new environment. Whereas with a puppy, it's a lot more difficult to ascertain what they'll be like in a year's time because you don't know what's going to happen to them and what they're going to experience. They can both learn new tricks. Older dogs can learn new tricks fantastically as well. The only difference is their motivations might change. They might not be as motivated by certain things. You just need to find out what motivates them, but they are just as able to learn new tricks as puppies. Wonderful. So what dogs are out there? So this is something that I think people tend to focus on, a certain breed, a certain look. It can go with trends as well, can't it? There are certain breed types that are becoming a lot more popular recently. What is a breed? So originally our dogs were developed, breeds were developed by us to specialize for specific working functions. Dogs supported people. They were used for herding, they were used for hunting, they were used for guarding. And what we did is we developed animals with really specific behavior traits that could carry out those tasks for us, really. Now, that has come on to an extent nowadays, but there are also a lot of breeds that we just use for companionship now. In fact, I'd say the majority we use for companionship. So what that means is our companion dogs that we now see might still have some sort of remnants of behavior or traits of dogs that were originally developed for working. And that can alter how we interact with them. But I'm going to start with genetic health conditions. So as we moved away from breeding for working functions and health, we have started to see a rise in dogs being bred for exaggerated appearances. You probably would have seen the flat-faced nose breeds, so like your pug up there. So though these dogs may seem really cute, and actually I think we've actually bred them to look more appealing to us, potentially to their own detriment. So these exaggerated appearances can sometimes cause certain inherited diseases. So some examples of breeds that have conformational related disease is your pug. So they often have, because the flat face is so short and the nose often doesn't protrude any further than the eyes are more at risk of injury. So if your pug runs into a wall, it's not going to be the nose that hits the wall first. It's generally going to be the eyes. So they're really, really easy to injure them. In addition, in the breed standard, I think it is for pugs, is the double curl on the tail. And the way that that's developed is generally a back condition. So it's like curvature of the spine, which can cause mobility issues in the pugs as well. Your Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. So they are known for the way that we've bred their head shapes can lead to something called syringomyelia. So what that means is little fluid-filled sacs develop around the spinal cord and can cause extreme pain. And there's quite a large proportion of them that are actually affected with this disease. And that pain can be lifelong as well. So it's really important for breeders to be able to screen and breed away from animals that have these problems. Your Dachshunds, your sausage dogs, you see them everywhere nowadays. They're very, very cute little things. But as you can imagine, having such a long back isn't necessarily beneficial in terms of how they move. So this long level back often leads to a spinal deformity where the discs they've got diseased discs, and generally them running around can cause injury a lot easier than it can for other dogs. Something else that's interesting is behaviorally, how dogs interact when they're playing. you've probably seen when a dog's bouncing around in the park and then they put their front paws on the floor and they put their bum and their tail in the air and they do a play bow and they do a bit of a wag. Now, Dachshunds really struggle to physically do that. They can't because their bodies aren't made that way. So they might also be impacted by other dogs treating them differently because they can't recognize that a Dachshund's playing. So they may get less out of dog-dog interaction. So there is so much to the way that we are breeding these dogs physically and so much to can take into consideration. So if you have your heart set on a pedigree dog or a specific breed, really do your research. Really do your research online, speak to a vet about health conditions. So I thought brachycephalic, your flat-faced dogs, needed a special shout out because they are so popular at the moment. You see them, they dominate UK influencers, social media, and they can be seen in all sorts of promotions and all sorts of adverts. Now, vets have been voicing concerns about them for a few years. They suffer from something often called BOAS. So it's generally that they have a flattened face or they have a shortened nasal area. The holes that they breathe through in their nose are often constricted and smaller, so they struggle to actually breathe through it. And they also have an excess skin that would be in the face, but we've pushed the face back, so it's actually down into the throat. And that's what you hear when you hear them going and struggling to breathe, because all this excess is called soft palate has been pushed back. So vets have been voicing concerns about this for quite a while, but they're continuing to be a really popular type of dog. So generally, the health effects this can cause is, again, exposure to eyes, so more likely to be injured by banging into things. Reduced airflow via the nose means that when they exercise, they're not actually getting as much oxygen in as the other dogs are. So they might have a reduced capacity for exercise. And also they overheat really easily. So their ability to thermoregulate by breathing is reduced. So it's really important to be really aware and not walk them in really hot times because they can overheat quite quickly. So I mean, that's a lot to take in for these little dogs because they're so sweet and usually their temperament is brilliant. But again, it's really important to be aware of these before you get a dog that does have these specific health concerns. Crossbreeds. So crossbreeds specifically, I'm saying crossbreeds different to mongrels. Crossbreeds where it's two breeds designed to go together like a cockapoo or a labradoodle and that sort of thing. They're also very popular. Just a shout out that it's a little bit more difficult to determine temperament or like generally breed temperaments as a crossbreed, because actually if you've got a cockapoo, so you've got a cocker spaniel and a poodle, you don't know which traits of which parent that the offspring is going to get. So it's very difficult to say, oh, cockapoos as a whole are X type of breed or they're X temperament behaviorally, because you don't really know which ones they're going to get. And I think some people are interested in doodle breeds, so your poodle crosses, because they're hypoallergenic, but they are not. So it's impossible for a dog to be hypoallergenic, but because they have curlier fur, they shed less. So they're less likely to cause that intense reaction, but it is still there. Breeds of working heritage and breed traits. So the lines of dog breeds that are bred for working functions today are likely to have inherent drives to exhibit certain behaviours, as we've bred them for, really. So such as in your terriers that were bred for ratting and your sight hounds that were bred for seeing and chasing, they're probably going to have a chase drive, which is going to be inherent. It's going to be something that's very difficult that you can't really train out to a level. You can train around it, but they will always have that drive. So it's important to take that into consideration when you're getting your dog. And there are also some breeds that have behavior problems that are more prevalent in that breed. So an example of this is, I think there's a study in which Dobermans have flank sucking, so sucking their side and sometimes, to the point where the hair's falling out. And no one's really sure why, but it does happen in Dobermans more often than other breeds. So it's something genetic element there. Doesn't mean that all of them will do it, but it just means that there's a predisposition there. So things like that go to look up. I love mongrels. Mongrels are fantastic. So it's very hard to pigeonhole mongrels, as you can imagine, because they can be absolutely anything, any shape, any size, any temperament, which is brilliant. So actually, if you're looking for a certain temperament dog, if you want a laid back dog, you want an excitable dog, I'd really recommend going to a rescue and saying, I would like this temperament of dog, and generally they'll be able to find you something quite quickly. But it's when people ask for specific breeds that sometimes it's harder and the waiting lists are a bit longer for those rescues. Cool. So in terms of getting a dog, what are your options? So this is a really interesting one. There are increasing amounts of people buying in online marketplaces at the moment, such as Pets for Homes, Gumtree, I think as well, and that absolutely skyrocketed in 2020 as well. As you can imagine, a lot of people working from home are thinking, well, actually, we're at home. This is a really great time for us to get a dog. I read from Pets for Homes actually that I think each dog that was being marketed last year at about May in 2020 had 420 people buying for each dog. For each dog for sale, there was 420 buyers. So actually at the moment, I think going to registered or licensed breeders is going to be quite difficult because demand is so high. So I'm going to start with rescue centres. I have spent a while working in rescue centres. I think rescues are a fantastic resource. You know, not only are they helping out individuals who can no longer care for their animal for a wide variety of reasons, it's also a great way to get a dog that has been behaviourally assessed, that's been veterinary assessed by professionals, and has had all of its preventatives usually. So it's been fleed, it's been dewormed and everything. And also the behaviour testing is usually quite in depth. They've put together history information. And so when you get a rescue dog, you're getting a lot of benefit, but actually in terms of the cost, a lot less. You're paying a lot less than you would be for a breeder. Now, there are different types of rescue centres which will carry different types of dog. So, for example, I believe there are some that don't take in animals with behaviour problems. There are some that do take in animals with behaviour problems. And I think sometimes there is a bit of a misconception that some people think that, oh, a dog comes from a rescue, it's probably got a behaviour problem or has been mistreated. But that's absolutely not the case. You know, I've seen beautiful dogs that are really behaviorally well-rounded come into rescue, and I think there's an increasing problem with people not being able to live in rented accommodation with animals, and that's actually a really big reason why people are giving up their animals. So I think we're moving away from that now, that where people are like, oh, actually no, you know, a rescue is a really good place to look for any type of dog, really. Basically, the benefits are huge, and what you get for your money as well is really fantastic. I would recommend rescue. So, a registered or a licensed breeder. If you really have your heart set on a puppy of a specific breed, in terms of achieving that goal, I think your best bet is probably a registered breeder. Now, in the UK, if you are someone that is breeding for profit, or if you breed, I think it's 3 litters or more in 1 year, you need a license. So you would be a licensed breeder. Responsible breeding is also really, really important. So again, people that are just solely breeding for profit potentially might not know that much about the breed, or might have a little bit lower standards of welfare or health screening for that animal. So a responsible breeder will really know their breed well. If you ask them questions about the breed, they'll be able to talk to you about it for hours, and you'll know that. You'll feel the passion from them. So in addition to that, they will usually ask you a lot of questions. A really good breeder will be really interested to know where their dog is going, whether you can provide for the dog, and why you want a dog from them as well. So they might grill you a little bit, and that's not a bad thing. That's actually saying that this is a responsible breeder that is really invested in their puppies. So you also get something called the Kennel Club Assured Breeders Scheme. So this is almost like an extra layer of, this is a breeder trying to show how responsible they are. And they are they get an independent assessor, I think, come out and assess their home or where they're keeping their puppies. So again, Kennel Club Assured Breeder is another layer of, okay, this person is probably quite responsible. They're part of the scheme. Also, if you go to a really brilliant registered breeder, they are more likely to give you pre and post puppy support. So you'll go there before and you'll speak to them before the puppies are born or before you can take them home. They'll probably invite you to come over a couple of times to see the dog. I'm not sure how that's working in COVID at the moment, but maybe video link. You'll be able to see the parents and interact with parents and see what they're like as well, which again, we know genetics influences behavior. It's an important thing to keep on top of. And yeah, they won't shy away from your questions generally. What we spoke about in the last slide, so in terms of your genetic disease and things that can be inherited, a really good breeder that knows their breed well will have gone through the screening process for really common issues in their breed. So for example, with the Cavalier King Charles Spaniels and Syringomyelia, you can screen the adults for having that problem, and then you breed together the ones that don't. So that's how you ensure that the line continues to be a healthy line and that we're not breeding puppies that we know are going to suffer later in life. So that's really important with your registered and your ethical breeders, and questions to ask. So casual or accidental breeders. So I've classed this as, so if a licensed breeder has 3 or more breeds in a year, they have to meet certain regulations. If you are an unlicensed breeder, you are breeding less than 3 litters a year. So generally there is no regulation around it to the same level. So it can be a lot more difficult to ascertain, you know, what sort of standards is this breeder looking to meet? How responsible are they? It can be a bit more difficult to ascertain. Now, these breeders you'll usually find are only advertising online. And things like, they may not be screened for their health before breeding. So this person might not be that aware of things in the industry, like as the health screening. They might not be socializing the puppies to the proper extent in the right type of environment. So you might get a behaviorally less robust puppy when you do go to get it. And I think the biggest problem here is when you buy online, especially direct from online. So for example, you don't see the dog beforehand, you don't see the parents, you go online, you say, oh, that puppy looks beautiful, I'm going to get that. And then you meet up somewhere. It's a really big flag if it's not in a home environment that you meet to get a puppy. You might be at risk of essentially funding a puppy farm or getting a puppy from a puppy farm. So if you aren't aware of what that is, I wasn't for quite a while. It's like a farm, a field with puppies. Not quite as idyllic, I'm afraid. So what a puppy farm is when they keep breeding females, breeding bitches, and they repeatedly breed them sort of continually. So there's no time to recover after having puppies, and they're kept in very barren environments, so they don't have the home environment to get used to. As we said earlier, those puppies are at a great age to soak in everything, but they've got nothing to soak in. So what that means is they may struggle to adapt later in life. And so often it's easy to pick out a puppy farm dog as an adult because you see they're very shut down and they don't want to engage with anything, and they're very frightened a lot of the time. And a lot of them come with health problems as well. And a lot of puppy farms have been shut down in the last couple of years because the law changed slightly. But you don't want to risk getting an animal from that type of place. So those are the red flags to look out for. So yeah. Oh, I spoke about that for a bit, didn't I? I'm passionate. Rescues from abroad. So I think the rescues from abroad, again, needed a special shout out because they are increasing popularity at the moment. And they're also quite a specific behavioural profile. So often these dogs come in as street dogs. So they're community kept dogs, free roaming dogs, which is a very, very different lifestyle that domestic pet dogs are kept in over here. So due to growing up in a different environment, again, that sensitive stage of their life and their juvenile adulthood, they're running around unconfined. It's brilliant. They generally don't interact with people or humans as closely as pet dogs do. You know, pet dogs, they're in your bed, they're on your face when you're asleep, things like that. Your street dogs will interact with people, but just maybe take food from them and still have all that space to escape into if they want to. It's a very, very different environment to coming into a home environment, but there's less space to move away. And actually our expectations are that they engage with us a lot more than they would have done previously. So for that reason, sometimes we bring them over to a UK domestic home and they do go on to develop like anxiety related problems because it's so different to what they're used to and they take quite a while to settle in. Again, individually, that might change between individuals. There might be some that settle in really well, but in my experience, generally they do struggle more because of that. And that makes, total sense. So if you are looking to get a dog from abroad rescue, that's such a fantastic thing to do. Might be a little bit more difficult at the moment with Brexit, but I'd contact a behaviourist to support you go through that process and also set up and prepare for when your dog arrives and help you really get it off to a good start. Breed-specific rescues. So if you have your heart set on rescue, but you really want that specific breed and it really fits with your lifestyle and you just really want one and you don't really want to get from a breeder, you want to go rescue, there are breed-specific rescues out there, which is brilliant. So what these are generally is run by breed enthusiasts who are fantastic people who usually have a special interest in a certain breed or breed type, like collies or spaniels and stuff like that. And what they do is they provide information. Usually they are a powerhouse of information on their own specific breeds, and they provide rescue services. So, if someone gets in contact with them and says, let's say it's a husky rescue, and we've got this beautiful pedigree husky, but we can't keep him anymore. We don't just want to send him on to anyone. Can you guys sort of vet a really great husky home? Then this is a great opportunity for you if you want to go into rescue, but you still want your breed. They'll also be able to give you a lot of behaviour support usually and talking to them because their knowledge really is great. It's really out there. And often overlooked, I think there's not as much knowledge out there about the breed-specific rescues. So now you've got your dog, well, you've got your puppy in this situation. How do you meet your puppy's needs? So firstly, gentle exercise is quite important. So it's essential to walk your puppy. They need to be introduced to the world. We know that, but as they're growing, juveniles can actually injure themselves and their bones and their joints if they're over-exercised at a young age. And puppies will run. They will just run and run and run. If they're having fun, even if they do injure themselves, they don't self-regulate. They won't find that go, oh, actually that hurts, I'm just going to sit down now. They're having fun. They will just run around anyway. So it is important to talk to your vet and figure out for the specific puppy that you have, for its breed, for its size, for its age, how much exercise should I be giving it and how should I be building that up gradually over time? Something that I didn't know when I started out, but quite an interesting thing. So appropriate socialization. We've talked quite a lot about socialization actually throughout this webinar. So when a puppy comes home to you, it's going to be about 8 weeks old. Now, between the age of 8 weeks and 12 weeks is its sensitive socialization stage. And ongoing really until about 1 year of age, you're going to really have to meet its socialization needs by taking it out everywhere with you. An important thing to mention as well is it needs to be controlled exposure. So you need to make sure your puppy is exposed to things at a stage that he feels comfortable at. So just like small children, if you're taking your kids out to the park, you want to expose them to see the park, but you don't want them to feel frightened. Something that's important to mention here as well is this stage where they are open to everything, open to learning. If they feel very frightened of something in this particular sensitive stage, they are likely to potentially go on and develop a phobia to that particular thing. So again, controlled exposure where they feel safe, they know you're there, and you keep it on a level for them which is really manageable for them to cope with, then they will learn in future to cope with new situations in a similar way and they'll feel confident about it. So that's really important. And if we don't appropriately socialize them to a really good level, then that's when you get your anxious adults, which is fine, but it's just a bit sad when they could enjoy life a little bit more if they had that confidence. Clear boundaries and basic training, again, gently reinforced. So in terms of training and drawing boundaries with dogs, I would always recommend reward-based training. So this is also sometimes referred to as positive reinforcement training. And what that means is when your dog or puppy performs a behavior that you love, that you want them to do all the time, he settled really nicely on the floor. He looked at me in the eyes and he sat down before I gave him his food, to reward. So reward, be it a food treat, be it a fuss, be it a stroke, be it play with a toy. Using those tools and those positive tools teaches your puppy how to really positively communicate with you, and you build up this dialogue that will go really far on into their lives. They'll know how to communicate with you on the right level. So when you want to do commands, I think something that's really important to learn as a foundation at this age that you will need throughout their lives is recall training. Your dog needs to be able to come back. He can get himself in a lot of unsafe situations by running off into the road and all sorts of things if he doesn't know a really solid recall. A wait is a brilliant one that you will have no end of requiring to use throughout his life. A drop for when he picks up something that you probably shouldn't have left lying around and I wish he was going to put it down. Teaching a drop or an exchange is a really good one for that. And a settle. Puppies especially, you know, are excited, they're everywhere. Teaching them to settle on cue can be beneficial for that puppy in setting him up for a certain situation. You know, let's say it's getting to the end of the day. If you can teach him a settle and he can sort of calm himself down after he knows what you want, that's a really great thing to take into adulthood as well. So enrichment alternatives. So it's really important to keep their minds busy. They are absorbing everything, but they also have so much going on in their minds, and we want to stimulate them just like we do kids as we teach them and give them things to do. So teaching to settle by themselves as well is really useful for just having bits and bobs around that they can engage with. So then if he's a bit bored, instead of you know, chewing the sofa or coming and jumping up at you, he might actually take himself away and play with that lovely new set of toys that you've popped into the corner. So something that's really beneficial for them. It's also great to give young puppies a real variety of things, a variety of toys of different textures, different colours, and this just helps their socialization, you know, to novelty. Really useful. And when they're eating as well, you can use feeding enrichment. So dogs, actually, I think every species apart from the domestic cat has shown that they enjoy something called contra freeloading. And what that is when they actually prefer to work for food than just be given it on the plate, which is fair enough. And also in their natural behavioural repertoire, you know, they don't eat a bowl worth of food in 5 minutes and then they're done for the rest of the day until 5 p.m. Usually, naturally, they would be scavenging, like sniffing around and searching for food. So giving them an opportunity to use that natural behaviour. We saw that in the 5 freedoms earlier. That's something that can only promote their welfare. So feeding toys and slow feeders are a great way to do this, or even something called scatter feeding, where, you know, you just get the food, you do it with dry food, not so much with wet, and then you just scatter it around, and then they have to, you know, go and search and find it. Really easy, really useful enrichment tool. And then your vaccinations and your trips to the vet. So first vet visit's important, it's quite important. What you really want to do is teach him that he's going to have a good time at the vets. So it's likely that he's going to have to go there at other points in his life. You first get your vaccinations, and you've got to be careful and speak to your vet, as before their second vaccination, they potentially shouldn't be going outside or meeting other dogs. But what we really want to teach in this consultation that you're having with the vet initially is vets are fun. Vets are a pleasant place to be. Vets are enjoyable. They can be your friend, because otherwise, if, you know, the dog has vaccinations and doesn't enjoy the sensation, then they might build up a negative association and think, oh, I don't want to come here again. And that's when you get a dog that gets quite upset when they realise that they're coming to the vet. So what you want to do instead is bring toys, bring food, bring anything that your puppy really enjoys. Take it to the vet and ask the vet to give him a treat after he's, you know, looked over his teeth. Ask the vet to have a little play with the tug toy. And if you do this every time your puppy goes, he'll really soon learn that, oh, it's a fun place. I quite like going there, actually. And then you win later on when you need to take him to the vets at some point. So getting an adult dog, slightly different kettle of fish. they take a lot more time generally. So they need a slow exposure to their new environment. Adults may be overwhelmed when they first come home with their new family. You have to ensure that they have a safe space set up for them, sort of that resembles almost like a den area, usually quite quiet, quite blocked off where they can't see everything that's going on, that's just quite calming for them, out of a human eye line, where people aren't going to bother them. So the reason for this is it's a lot going on. So if you imagine, you've gone to a new location, you don't know why you're there, but you're here, and there's new people around as well, and there are new sounds outside. You've never lived next to a main road before, and there are different smells because they've got some weird plant over there that you've never seen before. And these dogs can be really overwhelmed. They're not in the puppy phase where everything is sort of fun and exciting. They're like, okay, this is different to what I'm used to, and it's a lot all at once. So it's really important to slowly expose them to that environment, giving them a little safe space they can start off in, that they know no one's going to come and bother or scare them in. And then slowly over time, you'll see them become more comfortable, and they'll expose themselves really as well to other areas. So again, time to adjust. How long does it take them to adjust? Whereas puppies can be quicker, depending on your dog's background and the adult dog's history, really. It can take, from a week to maybe 6 months for rescue from abroad that's used to a very different environment to settle completely. Depends on the individual. To respect his need to adjust to the environment before building up social relationships is really important. Again, the environment is a big one, and the way that we use our vision is really important to us. Generally you'll look at something before you try listening to it or hearing it or tasting it. We don't use those senses as much as we use our eyes, and dogs use smell. So when their scent profile completely changes, it's a massive thing. So letting them get used to that before you try and initiate social contact is really important. When he is making social contact and you're building up a really lovely bond, again, clear boundaries, gently reinforce. So your dog may have lived in a home environment with very different rules before. So for example, if you get a dog from a rescue that's come from another lovely domestic home, that dog might have been jumping up on the sofa and sleeping in bed with the owner, but maybe you've decided, oh, I adore this dog, I just don't want him in my bed. The dog has very different expectations. The dog's like, oh, well, I've always jumped in the bed, it's been brilliant, it's been fun. Why are you throwing me off? I'm just going to get back on again. So you have to really clearly reintroduce your routine and your expectations, really. So again, positive reinforcement training, teaching an alternative behavior. If your dogs want to get up into your bed, instead teach them a settle, give them a bed near yours on the floor, and go from there. Really important one, actually. Your expectations of a dog, if you've had a dog previously, you might think, well, I've had a dog and he was all right with all of this. You are going to have to reintroduce this new dog, even if it's an adult, to how you expect them to behave. So establishing trust at his pace. So building up trust with new people can be slow for adult dogs. So you often see that they'll bond more to one person in the home and then start to expand it person by person, rather than puppies who are just sort of like, hello, I'm here, love me. So learn to read his body language. And again, though you see there are, generalizations across all dogs, like you see if a dog's tail's gone really low under his belly, he's probably quite scared. If they're tense or shaking or looking out the corner of their eye like that, they're probably quite scared. They're probably not ready at this point for you to start interacting with them. But also your dog's an individual, so there might be really small things that you notice that he does when he's worried, like go over to the water bowl and have a drink of water, just to sort of do something else that's not engaged with you because he's quite frightened. So once you've learned his body behavior, you'll notice that when he is ready, he'll come over and he'll start to come over to you and maybe give you a little nudge, and his tail might wag, and that's when he's ready to engage with you. Enrichment and safe spaces, just like puppies, your adult dogs need their enrichment as well. They need something fun to do, giving them a variety of toys, chews, and again, feeding enrichment, so important for every dog. There's no dog whose life can't be added to by giving out enrichment. Feeding enrichment, I think, is a massive one as well. All dogs can benefit from a bit of feeding enrichment. So what happens if you encounter behavior problems? Now, you can encounter behavior problems with puppies, young dogs. You can encounter behavior problems in older dogs, one's from rescue, one's from breeder, as there are so many things that link in to an animal's behavior, just like people, you know. There are so many things you can modify that will alter behavior. But what if you're there? Wherever it's come from, you now have a behavior problem. So you might want to contact a dog trainer. So dog trainers support with small problems that sit in the general realms of normality for dog behavior. You know, if a dog's barking, when you don't really want him to be barking, or he's jumping up, that's a normal dog behavior, but it might not be desirable for you. You might not enjoy that, and so you want to train them out of it, in which case you contact a dog trainer. Now, if you have a behavior problem that is causing either you or your dog's quality of life to decrease, so, you know, excessive barking, where he doesn't stop, he barks till he's hoarse, or he barks so much that you can't sleep. If there's something that's impacting either your or your dog's quality of life, or you're scared, you should contact a behaviorist. So the difference is a behaviorist will diagnose the underlying emotional behavior problem, and they will liaise with vets. So before you go to a behaviorist, you first want to take your dog to a vet to be checked over for a medical underlying problem, because sometimes, you know, barely noticeable, sometimes dogs hide it really well. If they're in a little bit of pain, that can change their whole demeanor. You know, if you're not feeling well, if you've got like a bad tummy or something, you might just be a bit irritable, and that might be a cause. So you want to first take your dog to the vet. If there's no veterinary concerns, your vet says no, clear bill of health, then you probably want to go to a behaviorist if you've got an ongoing problem. So your vet will have to refer to a behaviorist, but if you speak to either your vet and say, this is the behaviorist I want to refer to, can you send an email? Or speak to the behaviorist and say, this is the vet, can you ask them? If you've just gone to see them, then they can refer to you as well. And what you'll get out of that is you'll have a consultation, and you'll go through a really detailed history, and then you'll get something called a behavior modification plan, a long plan that is detailed to you, your lifestyle, your specific dog's motivations, your specific dog's behaviors and experiences, that will help you over time modify that behavior. So thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you followed it and found it really useful. If you enjoyed it, if you wouldn't mind going to Pets Explained Pets Explained Facebook page, and leaving a review, that would be brilliant. This QR code, I didn't know I could make QR codes, so I got quite excited when I saw it. But this QR code is a link to my website. So I offer tailored pre-puppy or pre-rescue sessions that talk about your specific case, your own setup, and what you're looking for, and what sort of rescue do I need to go to, what names of rescues can help me, things like that. I offer sessions for that. So if you wanted to link on through, and if you have a general question, so because specific cases are so detailed, I probably can't go into detail here if you have a case about a specific animal, but if you have any sort of like overarching questions about, oh, well, should I ask my breeder this, then feel free to ask away, and Daniel will throw some out to me, I think.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. So yeah, we're welcome to get going on the questions. We've got 2 already, so we can get started on those ones. And if anyone else has any questions, there's a Q&A box on the bottom toolbar thing. If you want to you can just put your questions in there, or put them in the chat, or whatever works best for you. So I'll give you the first one that we've got so far, which is, I'd love to hear your recommendation for a first-time dog owner. I'd prefer less grooming and shedding. I live alone, no kids will visit, in a home with a garden. Although I'll be home a lot, I'd like one that can be left alone in case I need to work in the office, want to go for lunch with a friend. Minimal training if possible, because as I'm not fully aware what training will entail, would love a staffy, although I've realised they struggle to be left alone. So any thoughts on any other breeds I should consider? Thanks so much.
Cool. So that's really interesting, because a lot of the things that you've mentioned there are actually related to behaviour, and then you've mentioned breed right at the end. So, and I can also see you said would love a staffy, but have realised they struggle to be left alone. That is potentially true for some staffies, but I've also seen loads of staffies that are absolutely love being left alone and will just snooze on the sofa. So if you're not anchored to a certain breed, actually, I would recommend going to a rescue and saying, these are my requirements that I would like. I'm open to having a staffy. And then I think they would be able to match you with a dog that can meet all of those needs. Because actually, I don't think there's a specific breed that I can recommend. I think there are a lot of dogs, a really big umbrella of animals that would come under your requirements. And I think a rescue would be a great place to say, what do you have for me that meets these needs?
Perfect. So we've got another question, which says, what does average training look like? Having never done it before, any idea or guidelines would help it seem less daunting? Thanks.
Yeah, I think it can be, if you've never tried it before, if you're trying it alone, it's building up a dialogue with your dog. So really simple things. And one of my favorite things actually to start training, a good foundation for any training for your dog, is if every time the dog looks at you and actually just stops and looks up to you in the eyes, to reward him with a bit of food, a bit of healthy food, otherwise you might have an overweight dog after a while. And then actually what that dog starts to do is whenever they want anything or are thinking something or are expecting you to do something, they'll just stop and look up to you. And that is a great foundation, because then if you go on to train anything else, they're immediately focusing on you, they're ready to learn. So that's where I'd start. And then I would recommend probably getting in touch with a trainer, and if you want anything specific taught. But actually, I think if you look online on some of the rescue organization websites, they have some really good basic training, step-by-step handouts and videos that show you as well how to do really basic things like teaching a sit, teaching a settle, teaching a lie down, and things like that.
Perfect. And we've got another one which says, it was really informative, which is great. And would you know about reasonable recommended prices when buying a breed?
Thank you. I'm glad it was informative. So reasonable prices when buying a breed. This differs really dramatically from breed to breed and also from year to year. So actually, I believe Pets for Homes, which is the main marketplace online sellers of animals that you find and use in the UK, they found that in 2019, the average price for a puppy, and this is generic, any puppy breed, was about £800, £900. In 2020, it went up to £1,800. So I think at the moment, things are inflated if you want a puppy from a breeder, just because demand is so high. It's not necessarily breeders taking advantage, it's that the demand is so high, so generally the price is raised. But I would do some research at different breeders, some assured breeders, from the Kennel Club scheme, and just a variety of other breeders, and looking at the prices, and then you can sort of average them out themselves. I wouldn't know about specific breeds, but I know that the price has gone up this year because of COVID. Oh, I can't hear you, Daniel.
Muted, sorry.
Yeah.
Got one last one, which says, are there any particular characteristics I should look for in a rescue? Like, is it better to go for a big rescue like RSPCA or a small local rescue?
So that's a really interesting question, and I really like that question. So rescues will differ in what they offer. Some will offer, for example, the RSPCA takes in animals from anything. They take them in from any situation, a lot of neglect situations as well. And so there are also some rescues that only take in certain amounts of certain breeds. So they want a really big variety of breeds that they're going to have. Your larger rescues will have more of a variety. They will also potentially be able to give you more detailed assessments. They might cost slightly more, but they might also give more medical things. So I know there are a lot of rescues that do like serious operations if needs be, whereas some smaller rescues can't necessarily afford that with their resources. So I'd first probably, if you're open to any type of dog, look into a big rescue. Ask them a lot of questions as well about what their intake policy is like, how they assess their dogs, how they assess their homes that the dog's going to, and what kinds of dogs they get in. breed rescues and more local rescues, I'd say do second. Though at the moment, I think a lot of them are using a lot of foster homes as well. So they have quite a lot of dogs in foster, so they might not be as available to see, though I suppose you can't really go anywhere at the moment anyway. Basically, what you want to look for in a rescue is, do they behaviourally assess their dogs? Do they medically assess their dogs? If so, do they carry out any routine procedures? So I know big rescues like Battersea will routinely do a descale on the animal's teeth if it doesn't look absolutely pristine. So that's really what you want to ask them.
Okay, brilliant. I think that is the last one. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed today. I really enjoyed the presentation. Lots and lots of great information in there. And yeah, that's everything I think we've got today, unless you've got anything else to add. Sorry.
The only thing I have to add is, if you guys aren't doing anything directly after this, go over to my Facebook page and pop me a review. Please. If you enjoyed, of course.
Brilliant.
Right. Thanks, Dan.